Apologies, apparently we've had some technical sound issues. So, Chief Counsel, I'm just going to repeat the actual question. And just to state that I know you cannot talk about the specific case as it's live and it's under investigation. But generally, how effectively are your officers working with the VRPs to prevent knife crime?
Before I talk about the work of violence reduction units, and that's how we refer to them, I'd like to express my condolences as well to everyone who's been affected by the tragic events in Bath over the weekend. It's a terrible thing to have happened, and we're very, very sorry that it has happened. I think it underpins the importance of intervening early to prevent violence, indeed any crime, but particularly violence, and that's what knife crime is, serious violence. That requires a true partnership effort, and that's what's at the core of the concept of the Violence Reduction Unit. And viewers might not understand what we mean by Violence Reduction Unit, but it essentially brings together the police, local government, health, education, professionals, community leaders and other partners to ensure there's a multi-agency response to violence in a locality. And the situation in each locality will be different. They work together to identify what are the drivers, the root causes of serious violence in that area, and then agree what action needs to be taken by either one or several of the partners to address it. Because I think that's a recognition that law enforcement often deal with the symptoms, but certainly cannot reduce serious violence like this on its own. So the focus on early intervention and prevention must never go away. Now, in Avon and Somerset, as you say, we have what we call a hub and a spoke model, where the hub sits with your office, but the spokes are located in each local authority to understand the local problem, and led by each local authority, and the police input into the local violence reduction units. The partnership, if you like, is through our early intervention teams. And what I see is partnership working across all of those partners that I've listed, inclusive of the police, is strong, and it's growing stronger. If I can give some examples of the work that happens, as part of Operation Sceptre, which happened in May, the violent reduction units in Somerset work together with our neighbourhood policing teams on knife crime awareness weeks in schools and colleges, and I think more than 500 young people were engaged within the course of that week. They introduced a new community knife bin outside of Dean House in Taunton. We've also built online guides and prevention sessions for parents to show them, look for the signs and how to deal with them. In South Gloucestershire, there were knife sweeps of all the open park and areas where we had intelligence that knives they're not carried all the time, they can be concealed for use when they're needed. The team have also come together on a intervention called Blunt Truth, which is a workshop that's delivered by police but also health professionals that aims to educate young people about the dangers of knives, but very importantly, how to raise concerns. If they know something is going on, how to do that in a safe way. Now, that workshop has been attended by over 2,500 children since it's been running, such that colleagues in Wiltshire are looking to emulate and use that product. In Bristol, the VRU, in partnership with the police, look at what we call an out-of-court disposal. So if a young person is found in possession of a knife for the first time, there are no aggravating circumstances, instead of being excluded from school or being criminalised, that young person will go through an educational input to give them a chance and an understanding of the choices and consequences that could follow the choices they make. As well as the early intervention team, clearly our Operation Remedy team comes into contact with young people at risk of criminal exploitation through their county lines work, and they too work with the Violence Reduction Unit, referring people in. Now the VRUs have merged from 2020, And at the same time they emerged, we were lucky to receive funding from government, what we call surge funding or GRIP funding, to enable us to do hotspot patrols. And it's through these two things that we've been tackling this problem. And what I can say is we have seen, on the question of effectiveness, a reduction of violent crime in virtually all of our 34 hotspot areas that we've been focusing on. And overall, we've seen knife crime reduced by 0.3% over that period of time. There was a reduction greater than that during lockdown, but I think that was due to the circumstances at the time. That's the first time we've seen a reduction. That said, it's progress in the right direction. Clearly, one event, like the event that happened at the weekend, is one too many. And it's always very difficult to measure prevention. What we're not able to say is there were another 5 of those incidents that didn't happen because of this work. So in summary, there is some really strong work going on between the police and a range of different partners through the violence reduction units. There's some positive progress, but this is a new concept. It's developing. It's undergoing some evaluation at the moment to tell us if it can improve. And given what's happened in the last week, I myself am receiving reassurances about the violence reduction unit and are they looking at the right cohort of young people. From the examples I've given, clearly we're very upstream in terms of education. Do we or another part of our partnership system need to be more proactive with those who may be involved at the moment?
Well, on that review and checking of the effectiveness of violence reduction partnerships, we are also doing a structural review of whether the hub and spoke model works. And one of the things that I'd ask you to look at is those tripwires for engagement in the partnerships. Have we set those tripwires right? Should they be lower? Traditionally, it was all about somebody who's excluded from school. I think it's too late by then if they're excluded from school. It needs to be before then. So what are the warning? What are the methods that a school will talk to the partnership and put people on the horizon for them to look at so that they can be engaged with? And I've also attended the Blunt Truth, which I thought was extremely effective, and that should be spread out as far and as wide and as quickly as we can to all children. Thank you, but we will be monitoring this very closely. Chief Staff.
Thank you. I wanted to turn to a different subject and note that last week it was National Volunteers Week, celebrating the work of volunteers across the country. Hundreds of people volunteer their time to the police, as well as the Police and Crime Commissioners' scrutiny panels, and collectively provide thousands of hours of support every year. Without their contributions, the service provided by the police wouldn't be what it is currently, and that's why special constables and citizens in policing are one of the areas of focus in the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan. So when people do volunteer, could you tell us a bit about how you're supporting them and making the most of their skills and experience?
Absolutely, but firstly, I'm really glad you've brought up this subject because it gives me another chance to celebrate and acknowledge the fantastic work that volunteers do for us. We want them to feel valued every day, but that week gives us an extra opportunity to try and increase that focus. And I'm going to put some numbers on some of that contribution because I think we should celebrate it and recognise it. So in Avon and Somerset, we have 238 special constables, and they've given us over 25,000 hours so far this year. We've got 152 police support volunteers who've already given us over 6,000 hours this year. And that's not to mention our cadets, our mini police, our community speed watch, our neighbourhood watch volunteers, and there are many others in many diverse roles. And I don't want to forget the volunteers that work with your office through the scrutiny of police powers, independent custody volunteers, etc. But you specifically asked about support. So firstly, we provide quality training, and it's bespoke to the role that they're doing. So for special constables, there's a national College of Policing syllabus. There are also national standards for a number of the volunteer programmes as well, which we ensure that we comply with. And if you're a volunteer in a particular area, you receive training specific to the volunteering that you're doing, so that you can do that role to the best of your ability and develop yourself. In terms of making value of the skills they bring in, that's an important aspect too, and recognising those skills. They add tremendous value. So our cyber volunteers who assist our cyber investigations, we even have experienced equestrians who help with our mounted officers and help our grooms in keeping our police horses as well turned out as they absolutely are. We're also keen to provide our volunteers with the right equipment, the right tools to do the job, and where we can and where it makes sense to make that personal issue as well. So that goes beyond uniform and personal protection equipment, but into technology as well. We also, when they're here after training, we make sure that there's tutoring and buddying, that people have access to the force welfare provision. And when it comes to special constables, recently the decision's been made to contribute to subscriptions to the Police Federation. So if special constables need the support because of some operational act that they've taken in, they have that support. In terms of development, those who volunteer can gain a great deal from working with the police, and the experience they may secure roles within our organisation, but often they can talk about the leadership and other skills that they've used to advance in their chosen career as well. It's a fantastic way that people can develop. They can build confidence and they can develop their skills as well. And we do have an employee-supported policing programme where we work with other organisations and they give some of their paid time for people to volunteer with us because they recognise the value working with the police and the skills their employees can acquire, as well as doing something good for the community. We also, going back to where the question came from, look to support our acknowledge and celebrate our volunteers wherever we can. We've recently had our Outstanding Policing Awards in the pump rooms at Bath, and we saw lots of volunteers actually receiving awards alongside their regular colleagues. And we do have bespoke events like the Citizens in Policing Awards as well. So in summary, we support, but we also recognise the fantastic service in a variety of ways that our volunteers give us. They can rely on us for their training, for matching the skills that they bring to the challenges of the organisation. They can expect to be rewarded and recognised, and they can expect to be able to progress in their own chosen careers as well through working with us.
Chief Constable, you and I and others have had a discussion about how we might improve the terms of service and the experience of special constables, and that I want to continue to go forward with. But I'm specifically interested in a little bit more around cyber specialists, because I think they have a lot to offer the constabulary. What's the offer that you have for cyber specialist volunteers?
Well, we have a strong and developing, and will continue to develop, offer for cyber specialists and volunteers. So we've got a programme. At the moment, that consists of 3 cyber volunteer roles. They're pretty much different to every other volunteer role that we have in the force. That's where the volunteers are engaged for their very specific skill set. So we go to them when we feel that their expertise would help us in trying to achieve what we need to achieve in the field of cyber. And that includes developing tools and applications to combat the threat of cybercrime, both on our shores and internationally, providing tactical advice during searches and interviews of suspects, and also helping us review large data sets to identify vulnerabilities and attack methods and gather evidence from them. So those are our volunteers. We also have 5 special constables who specialise in cybercrime. Now, they are very much utilised when we execute search warrants, particularly those that we know are going to have a digital element to it. They take part in all the continuous professional development our regular officers and investigators have, and they very much are a part of the team. And if I added all of their experience, both their training and their employment, it adds up through those 8 roles to over 100 years of combined experience available to us as the constabulary. That will have to develop as cybercrime evolves. One of the areas of cybercrime is fraud. It's not just fraud, but it is fraud. So we've recently developed our programme to include a fraud volunteer role, and that's someone bringing in specialist skills to help us with cyber fraud as well. So, as I say, we see it continuing. It is something that is looked upon by other forces in the region, certainly is something they'd want to emulate. So in summary, we've got an innovative and leading work going on. We do utilise skill sets that are outside of policing, and it is supporting us to be absolutely on the front foot in what is a fight against a complex and ever-changing threat. And I hope that those individuals with those specialist skills also feel that they're doing something really positive for their community as well by helping us in the way that they are.
Well, we will continue that dialogue and discussion about it. I suspect the next meeting that we have planned on this type of subject is about artificial intelligence, the pros and cons of that, and how the constabulary can exploit it for the benefit and the protection of the community. I now want to change subject to the agenda item 2. These are issues that you, the public, have contacted me about. There has recently been national media coverage about rape and sexual assaults in hospital. For a lot of people, when they are patients in hospital, it's when they are the most vulnerable. For this vulnerability to be exploited in this way is absolutely horrific. This has come to the people's attention because of a report by the Women's Rights Network. This had responses to freedom of information requests from all forces. And the report says that you, Chief Constable, rejected the FOI request. However, I see that you did provide some data. Can you please explain this and how you'll improve the recording of crime location, this type of crime, in those locations going forward?
Okay, so clearly when people are in hospital, they're at their most vulnerable, and so I'm really supportive of the Women's Rights Network raising this as an issue. It's an important concern. We have, yes, received several, actually, freedom of information requests about rape and serious sexual assaults that could have happened in hospital settings, including wards, asking a variety of questions, the numbers, the charges, the outcomes. None of these that we can tell came from the Women's Rights Network, but the way that requests come in, they come under a person's name, so they may well have done. It's just that we're unaware of which one. We do consider every single Freedom of Information Act request that comes in, and there are many, and where we refuse, as we did for some of these requests, we do provide a rationale along with an appeals procedure for the person making the application. In this case, the reason that we didn't respond to some of those requests was that the scope of the request was so large that it would have exceeded for us the appropriate time limit set in the legislation for us to be able to reply. So the legislation says 18 staff hours is the maximum you should give to a Freedom of Information Act request. Clearly, more than that takes away from other things that the police should be doing. So in this case, when we looked at the requests, the data that we have, as you'd expect in a very large-scale crime recording system, there were lots of inaccuracies inherent in it, and to give a sense of those, addresses being incorrectly spelt. Some of our hospitals sit across numerous postcodes. There are numerous wards within them. And this was a really critical point, we found that the offence where the place where the offence is reported, the hospital, was not always the place where the offence took place. So there were a huge amount of data quality issues and interactions. What it would have required us to do to answer all of those requests was to trawl through every single report on its own merits and manually check the body of the report for the information requested. Now that would have taken us way beyond the 18 hours, and significantly so. We were able, as you say, to respond to one of those requests, and that was more limited because it asked very specifically about 6 hospitals in the Avon and Somerset area. Clearly there are data quality issues. It's something that's been picked up nationally through my national work on rape when we look at police forces recording. We are in the process of updating our Force Gazetteer, which is how we find the right location. Viewers will be aware of this when you go online and you put your postcode in. It gives you a range of addresses and you choose yours. That's the kind of technology that we need to update. That means that all our there will be greater accuracy in our location data, in our coordinates, our beat codes, on all of our core operational systems. It's also worth saying that our data quality team has recently worked through to tidy this up. All our location data linked to Southmead Hospital, to Western General, to Bristol Royal Infirmary, and they're working on the RUH at Bath at the moment, so we do have this data. So I am sorry, we're limited is what we could provide. We did provide what we could. It was important that it was accurate, and we're working really hard to improve this picture, both tidying our data but putting the systems and technology right so it doesn't happen in the first place.
So in summary, the reason that you didn't provide the FOI was basically around data quality. You are now going through a process of fixing that. When will the data quality in this area be fit for purpose?
The data quality, it's a continuing effort. I don't want to set a date that I failed to meet. We have significantly cleared up our data quality issues over a number of years now. Our first priority was person data. Clearly, that's important. We are now working on location data to make sure that's as accurate as it possibly can be. The technology will help this. Some of it is also user error by those entering it. In an organisation of 6,000 people, have to make sure that everyone is getting that right, as well as having the system to help them get it right. So it's a continuing effort. I would like to be in a place where everything we enter is absolutely correct. I can't tell you when I will reach that, but there is a huge amount of energy and even senior shoulders to the wheel to make this right.
Well, I will come back to this, as you know, because it is of concern, but it's a distraction from the actual issue, which is how we are helping the NHS prevent this type of activity in hospitals. And could you just give me a little bit of a summary about what we're doing to help our partners in this world to stop this happening?
Well, the first thing to say is there's recently been a national strategic threat assessment around violence against women and girls, and specifically looking at within that rape and serious sexual offending. Now, 4 forces in the UK, I did identify hospitals as key locations for these offences recurring. We were not one of those 4. We actually, through our own problem profiling, which we did to contribute to our input to that threat assessment, did consider our location data. It didn't highlight hospitals in our force area as an area of focus, even with the data quality issues, which, you know, the data quality issues would suggest there are more than there actually are. But even so, we didn't identify hotspots there. We have got a really detailed understanding of where our violence against women offences are occurring. And the vast majority are happening in private spaces, largely homes, 61% of them. Now, we have a dedicated team looking at all our sexual offences in Avon and Somerset called Bluestone. And they, combined with our intelligence team that they work alongside, have really good and well-tested mechanisms to spot any trends, whether that's a particular hospital or a hospital setting. That will only improve with the data quality that we've talked about. But I'm very confident that if we were seeing trends like those emerging, we would be responding to them. We've got good operational, tactical and strategic relationships with all our NHS providers, all our local authorities who may commission some of these. These are not just big hospitals, they could be small community wards, etc., and other health spaces, to be able to deal with problems as and when they arise. So I'm very confident of that. I know, you know, that I lead nationally on rape and serious sexual offences. And for the past 2 years, I've been leading a transformation programme which has consisted of a deep dive into understanding where problems exist. I think in Avon and Somerset we're pioneers for the approach. And that approach is very much focused on, you know, where the hotspot is really the perpetrator. There are repeat and serial perpetrators. They may be using a hospital setting where people are vulnerable, but they may be using other spaces as well. So be assured, in summary, we will work with our partners in prevention work per se. If that's a hospital setting, yes. If it's other settings, absolutely. But in Avon and Somerset, I'm confident wherever an offence of rape or serious sexual offence happens, the victims are going to experience a very strong response from us in helping them be safe, but also see justice done. And we have the partnership working to enable that to happen.
Chief Constable, thank you. I think the next question is now with the Deputy Chief Constable, and this is around the Peel report. That you may recall that the Avon and Somerset were inspected by a Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue, and they brought out a number of issues. This particular area where we need to improve, where the Constabulary need to improve, is about responding to calls for service within the published timeframes based on the prioritisation given to the call. First, please could you explain briefly to the viewers what those timeframes are?
Of course, yes. So we have different grades of calls. In respect of our immediate calls that are graded as immediate, in an urban area, our aim is to attend within 15 minutes, and in a rural area, we would aim to attend in 20 minutes. We've got a large policing area in Avon and Somerset in terms of geography, and so we need to factor that into the response times. The next graded of call we call priority incidents, and that's regardless of crime type, but we would aim to attend those within 1 hour. And then for lower threat, harm, risk incidents, we grade those as routine, and we would aim to respond within 12 hours. So just to give a bit of context, an immediate call is something which is happening right now, where there is immediate risk to life. You know, for example, perhaps an assault is taking place at this particular right now. We need to get there immediately to stop further harm. And typically you'd see vehicle responding, maybe with the blue lights on, maybe with their sirens on for those types of incidents. The priority instance that I talked about is something that may have happened very recently, but it's not ongoing now. We still would want to get there within an hour to make sure that we can capture any evidence. An example of that type of call might be when we're attending a burglary, for example. And then routine calls are things like perhaps something which has happened not at all recently, or we're not sure when it's happened, it's less serious, there's less risk involved, perhaps damage to property, perhaps a broken window. So those are our response times.
So what are we doing to improve it as per the findings in the Peel report?
So there's lots that we're doing. We've increased we've uplifted our numbers of staff, so we're making sure that they are located in the right jobs and the right locations around the force so that we can respond quickly. We're looking at it as a process from the moment we receive the call to the moment, if we are going to attend, we attend. So when we receive the call, we take the information quickly, we're able to pass that quickly to a unit that is able to, the correct unit with the right skills to respond. We monitor that on a daily basis, and we, if we're not responding as quickly as we need to, then we look at ways that we can improve that.
So I'll ask this question again in a few months' time, and then I would like to see answers that reflect the percentage of improvement that we have made since this Peel report was written. Finally, Chief Constable, thank you. I just wanted to discuss today the focus on response times during the summer period particularly, referring back to the serious incident we discussed at the start of the meeting in Bath. I was pleased to see that you responded incredibly quickly to that, and that enabled you to arrest the suspects quickly. However, the data and the public tell me you don't always get to incidents as quickly as you should. Now, I understand the generic way of improving since the Peel report, but specifically during high summer demand, Chief Constable, what are you doing to improve on what you did last year?
So in all my times as a police officer, many years now, our demand has always increased during the summer months, increased calls for service from the public. Generally, it increases by as much as 20% during the summer months, but actually last year we saw our immediate and our priority incidents rise by 30%, which was higher than normal. So in addition to our calls every day from members of the public, we have a number of planned operations where we can predict that we are going to need to resource and attend to those operations. Examples will be, in the next few weeks we have the Glastonbury Festival taking place, but there are many summer events as well as potentially large-scale raves and incidents like that which we need to resource and we need to plan for. That coincides with high numbers of officers may need to go back to university as part of their training. That happens during the summer on occasions as part of their apprenticeship programme. I'm pleased to say that this year there's a smaller number of officers will be going back to university during the summer than happened last summer. So we've been working since January. We've been taking all the learning from previous operations, looking at this summer. So we want to be data-led, we want to understand the data, but also we've been listening to our colleagues to understand their experience of when they're policing this summer. Last year's operation was very successful in respect of responsiveness and answering the calls from our public, but it didn't feel that way for some of our neighbourhood colleagues and officers and staff working directly with neighbourhoods who felt that they weren't able to engage with some of their routine engagement work and problem solving over the summer because a lot of them were answering calls from the public. So we've looked at that. We have looked at how we accurately predict how much work and demand that we're going to have, so that we can better allocate those resources. This year we're using a new resource and forecasting tool. We think it's a lot more accurate and we'll be able to identify those pressure points. And we've built our resourcing model around that for this summer, so we're using technology to be more efficient. We're running what we call Op Hibiscus. It started on the 1st of June this year. It's planned to run until the end of September. The aim of it is to safeguard and support our communities during the busy summer period, but also balancing the welfare and resilience of staff so they're able to give a good service when they do attend. This year we're bringing up resources from across the organisation. Last year I think it probably felt to our people that we were focusing on neighbourhood resources. We're using resources from across almost every department in the force, particularly to answer those priority calls from the members of the public. And some examples of that. So our roads policing staff will be attending all of road traffic collisions. They don't necessarily normally attend the more minor ones, but they will attend all of them during the summer. Armed response officers and our staff in our integrated offender management will be responding to burglaries. Colleagues from non-frontline roles, such as our trainers, our assessors, members of staff in our learning department, and also the members of staff that support the Chief Constable's office, will be deployed during periods of high demand to answer those calls from the public. So we are responding by engaging with our neighbourhood staff, making sure that our plans are going to be effective this summer. Last summer, I think potentially some of the neighbourhood staff were deployed across the force. This summer, they will only be deployed in their own neighbourhood areas. So it's the areas and the communities that they're familiar with, dealing with crime and incidents in those areas. We're really committed to supporting those neighbourhood teams. We want them to be able to continue the really important problem-solving work that they do with their communities, such as dealing with antisocial behaviour, as well as balancing answering the calls that are coming in from the public today, tomorrow, next week. So we're really confident that we've got a robust plan in place this summer, but we are monitoring it on a weekly basis. We're monitoring the data, but we're also monitoring the feedback from our staff and, very importantly, from communities, and we can tweak the plan if we need to as the summer continues.
Deputy Chief Constable, thank you for that. That gives me some reassurance. I'm pleased to hear that reinforcing patrol from the whole of the constabulary, I think that's an excellent thing, not least because it keeps people hand in, perhaps those that have become too focused on a desk job will have the opportunity to get out there and be in the field again. And so I think that's very sensible, and I like that focused attention from those different departments into different areas of response. I think that's really good. So I, alongside you, will be monitoring that progress, and I also like your ability to tweak it as necessary as the plans change and as the situation unfolds. So thank you both, all of you, for your time today. Thank you for watching. The next meeting will be on the 11th of July at 1500 hours in the afternoon. Until next time, stay safe.